Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's 2 o'clock, time for the Inverclyde Live-Stream. But first, a little music. Enjoy.
What a good time when we built all the great ships here. But that once time is our lost time now. That is our yesteryear. Sugar cane from Jamaica, put a sweet tooth in every mouth, and the cotton that once was spun here fine was gathered by black hands of the South. Factory girls, topped with scarves, made the sugar, spun the bread, and the tough men who made the great ships great were proud to call themselves red. There once was a good time when we built all the great ships here. But that once time is our lost time now. That is our yesteryear. Raw tobacco from Virginia, bonded next to ruby wine, moved by dirty, puffing steam trains to factories on the line. Good old roads from Port Glasgow, cooper barrels for the whiskey trade. All the world knew that the legend claimed the best ships were always Clyde made. There once was a good time when we built all the great ships here. But that once time is our lost time now. That is our yesteryear. But that once time is our lost time now. That is our yesteryear. But that once time is our lost time now. That is our yesteryear. But that once time is our lost time now. That is our yesteryear.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming along. Nice to see you all here. And it is a fine afternoon out there, so I'm not going to keep anyone too long for this live stream. The good weather is too precious around here to be missed. First things first, my name is John Davidson. I am the founder and present leader of the Pensioners Party, a party that was formed only last year to represent not just the pensioners of the country, but for all those who feel left out, left abandoned and left behind. And millions of us do feel that way, not just here in Inverclyde but throughout the land. But specifically here in Inverclyde, I'm sorry to inform you, if you don't already know, but the council tax is going up by almost 2%. After the election, of course. After the election. That will also mean an increase in the brown bin collection charge, and no doubt an increase in the collection of unwanted household goods by the council. Dispelling the illusion that the SNP are not spendthrifts, because they are. They have plunged Scotland into billions of pounds of debt. I would argue through their mismanagement. They have spent countless millions on their own propaganda to try and sell ideas that the ordinary people, not just of Inverclyde, but the whole of Scotland, do not want. So the council tax for everyone in the area will go up by almost 2%. Now, that may not sound a lot to some people, but for others who are living on the margins already, that 2% will mean an awful lot. Because I'm sure, like me, when you've been doing your shopping, you cannot fail to notice the constant rising prices on everything. Everything that we buy is going up almost on a weekly basis. I don't want to exaggerate, but we can see it. The prices go up and we get less for the money. So when you factor in this 2%, that's quite a bit extra out of your wallet or your purse. And as I say, most people these days, whether they've got a job or not, are on a fixed income, one way or t'other. Which means effectively that we're all getting poorer. And of course, that hits the poor people the most. They have even less in their purses and wallets. And again, I'm not just referring to pensioners, I'm referring to anyone on welfare and everyone who's on a fixed income in a job or other. Personally, I find this intolerable, because we are not going to get any more services for this extra 2%. That 2%, I imagine, and I cannot know for certain, but I should think that the 2% is to keep the council spending standing still. There'll be no extra spending. That would be simply to cover what's already being spent. But it does mean these extra taxes that SNP and our council have brought in will also go up. And if you look at any one of these three taxes that I've highlighted on my flyer, you will come to see that they are completely unfair. Because if you don't have a garden, for example, then that tax does not apply to you in any way, shape or form. However, if you do have a wee bit of garden or a big bit of garden, no matter, then you're getting taxed because you've got a garden. You're being penalised. Because anyone who's got a garden and likes to sit outside is going to cut their grass at the very least. And now the council have given them a problem about how to dispose of that. Unless they're willing to pay the £30 odd to have it collected. And therefore, they have now a tax which other people do not have. When in fact, no one should have this extra tax. That should already be counted for in rubbish collection. And I'm sure it is. Or it was at one time. You have to remember this is a new tax. But before it was introduced, garden collections were being done. So it's not a new service. They can't claim it to be a new service. The only thing that's new about it is it goes in a particular coloured bin. And we can see that that makes a certain amount of sense, having a particular bin for a particular type of disposal. But I still argue that it's unfair on those who have gardens, and why should they be penalised with this extra tax when they're already paying council tax? Whether they get assistance on that or not is irrelevant. It's still there. Not everyone gets help. There are people, plenty of people in the Inverclyde who don't get any kind of help with poll tax. I won't call it poll tax, council tax. I think it's a simple way of pulling in even more money from the general public and putting people under unnecessary strain. People do get upset about this. How will they get rid of that rubbish if they can't afford to pay the £30 odd? And that forces people into doing things that they would rather not do. That's quite contrary, in my mind, to why the council exists in the first place. The council exists in the first place as far as the Pensioners Party is concerned, to look after people, to look after the town, to make sure, as far as we can possibly make sure, that it's a safe, clean and reasonably safe place to live. Because after all, it's the people who are Inverclyde. It is the people who are Inverkip, Gourock, Greenock, Port Glasgow and Kilmacombe. The rest is architecture. And it will be the same for the collection of unwanted household goods. It too will be up in cost, probably by that same 2%. But on top of all of that, all of us, whether we pay these things or not, are all being hit by inflation. Now I'd like to read to you one of our policy statements, and this is for retired people, because come the winter that 2% is going to represent a lot when we, again, if we factor in and consider the general cost of living is going up constantly. We've already got people who have to make a decision in the winter time what they're going to do about their heating because they can't afford the bills. Well, we have a proposal for that. And I'll read it to you. UK basic state retirement pensioners will receive, if we were in charge, domestic gas supplies free of all charges and fees during a designated period. Now the designated period would run from the 1st of October continuously until March the 31st the following year. It would be an upper limit would be applied to all those receiving this state allowance based upon a national average winter consumption. So the gas companies would be asked to produce an average of usage, and we would look at that average and apply an upper limit so that we don't get people abusing this benefit by simply, and people have been known to do this, run central heating and open windows. I know some who have done it and do it. And this would be free of charge for the person. So no one would come to the house demanding money. There would be no bills coming in demanding payment. And we would also expect the electricity suppliers to do likewise. Electric supplies free of all charges and fees during the same designated period, which would be, of course, the 1st of October, running continuously until March 31st the following year. Again, there would be an upper limit on that because some people will use electric heating rather than gas, so it's to accommodate for that. But again, we would get the companies to produce an average of winter consumption for electricity and then apply an upper limit to it, so again it is not abused. And there will be people, if we were able to introduce this scheme, there would be people who would try to abuse it. There always is, unfortunately. And that would definitely alleviate the poorest amongst us during the winter time, and would give them the independence that they would be paying their own bill during the rest of the year. So it's not a complete welfare check for heating and lighting. And I don't think that would be the right way to go, but I do think over a winter period people should not be forced into either putting the heating on and not buying food, or buying food and not putting the heating on. We're supposed to be in a first world country. We're supposed to be civilized. We're supposed to be caring. And yet, every year, we hear stories on TV, in newspapers, about old people making these kind of choices and dying because of it. And that to me is unacceptable, and it's unacceptable to the Pensioners Party. This might sound overly generous, what we're suggesting, but I would ask you to stop and consider how much money do we spend in foreign wars? How much money do we send abroad in terms of aid, blanket aid? Just checks. We don't know where the money goes. There is no accountability regarding this money. And it's a guaranteed sum every year. This was guaranteed 5 or 6 years ago. It might even be more by Westminster. It's a proportion of GDP they get. And yet there are people in this country dying of hypothermia and or starvation effectively. We say charity should always begin at home. And once we sort those social problems out in this country, then we can think about helping others. But we have to help ourselves first. And that means we can't help other people until we help ourselves and get our own problems sorted. And these are big problems, and they're only going to increase. I don't really want to speak about what's happening in the Ukraine, but it will definitely feed in to what happens in the winter. Because Russia, if you do not know, supplies Western Europe with gas. Germany, for example, takes 70% of their gas directly from Russia. What's going on in Ukraine now could easily drastically alter all of this for all of us, not just the poorest. If that gas link were to be switched off, and so when you hear reports about Russia invading Ukraine, leaving all the politics out of it, it's a dangerous situation for the rest of Europe because of these gas supplies. And we have allowed, Britain has allowed themselves to be put in this situation by the decisions made in this country over energy. We have still plenty of gas supplies in the North Sea and round in the West Coast, not yet explored. We have options here. But the SNP would rather spend money in putting political ideas into schools than looking after people who really need looked after and protected from the economics of wars. And although we're a tiny part of Scotland, tucked away here in the west, all of this will impact on us. Make no mistake, folks, that 2% that the council tax is going up by may not sound a lot now, but it's what will happen to the gas supplies that could really, really make a huge difference. And as far as I know, there are no plans put in place by the SNP to try and alleviate any of these difficulties that might come our way and could easily come our way because of the Ukrainian situation. Inverclyde is not a little island protected from what goes on in the rest of the world. I might feel it at times that these are faraway places and these events have nothing to do with us. And that's true to a certain extent. However, they do impact on us sooner or later. And I do shop. I know the prices are going up. And we have no control over that. And neither does the SNP or any other government. So don't let them fool you if they try and tell you they've got answers for all of this, because they don't. If a company decides to put up the price of milk or sugar or bread, politicians can't do anything about it. Not really. And I'm sure all of you who do shop have already seen all of this happening. And it will continue to happen. It will not stop. The economies of the Western world are broken. And no one knows the answers to this. And I certainly don't know the answers to it. I personally think we're on the edge of hyperinflation, and if that starts, there'll be no hiding it. And as I say, if you're on a fixed income, you're at everyone's mercy. So what do you do when you run out of money? and the heating bills coming in. Again, no one's addressing any of these things. I haven't heard a squeak from anyone. Now, obviously, even if I were a councillor, there's little I could do about it. But I think it's important that people know what's going on and at least offer a possibility of why things are happening the way they're happening. When I'm in the shops, I hear women complain about it all the time. The price of this, that and t'other. As I say, that will just continue on. So the last thing Inverclyde needed was a 2% increase in council tax. But we have it. I also noticed that they are delaying other decisions until after the local elections. And that's the usual approach for all politicians. Put off a decision until after you've voted. They will promise you this, that and t'other, and as soon as you've given their vote on these promises, well, you'll never see these promises made good, because once they get your vote, that's all they're interested in. But this line of communication, if you're not used to it, if you've not got any experience of YouTube, the reason I use it in this way to speak to you directly is because you can speak to me directly through the comment sections, and we can open up a dialogue between us, which is far more democratic in my mind than the surgeries that are held by the councillors. They are definitely useful and necessary, of course, but this would be an addition, what I'm doing, because not everyone is fit and able to go along to a surgery. And too often when the surgeries are on, you know, the rain's pelting down outside and you're waiting on a bus to go somewhere. Again, there's far too many assumptions by all politicians that everyone has access to the internet, everyone has access to a motor car and a mobile phone. And none of that is true. None of it. And I'm concerned about the other people, the people who don't have any of these things. They're the forgotten. And it's the same as this. Not everyone can afford to interact with YouTube. And I understand that. That's where your surgery does come in. But there are many people stuck at home through ailments, on welfare payments, who perhaps have access to YouTube and the internet and could make their views known through this medium. And that's why I started it up, for those people. So for the moment, I don't have much else to say except to ask for your vote. If not your first vote, your second vote. Remember, these votes are transferable. And if you feel that you're aligned with one of the mainstream parties, fair enough. But you could consider giving the Pensioners Party your second vote, if not your first vote. And I would urge everyone, if they are able physically, to get to a polling station when the day comes to go out and vote. Otherwise, it will be the same people who will get in again, and nothing much will change. If you want the possibility of change for the better, and you don't think you've seen it in the last 10 years, then it's time to vote for somebody else. And that's where independence and the Pensioner Party comes in. We hold no allegiance to any big corporation or medium corporation. There's no one in the background with a giant bank book promoting us. All our funds come from our members and donations that are given. That way we can't be influenced except by the membership, as it's supposed to be, and the wishes of the people. On top of all of that, and remember what I said about the telephone lines. I have to look into that further. The landlines. If that should happen, that would be catastrophic. For not just Inverclyde, but for millions and millions and millions of people. So, for the moment, I will say adios, cheerio, and until next Sunday, I shall say goodbye for now. You may see me out and about next week delivering flyers, depending on where you live and where I am. My intention is to go back out next week with more flyers. So you may see me. If you see me, please stop and say hello and give me your thoughts about what you think is needing done in the town. So don't be shy at coming forward, as to say. Until then, I will say enjoy the rest of the Sunday, and I hope you like this piece of music. Bye for now.
Silently the snow falls, paints a winter scene, swiftly spreads the dark rim, hides the fading autumn green. Moonbeams brush the dark wood, conjure friendships dear to me. Lightly now the breeze flows, disturbing more than just the leaves. But life's much more than we can know. We are one small glow in the eternal flow. Patiently the love grows, lifts the weary heart, now she holds me, melts two worlds once apart. Moonbeams brush the dark wood, usher dreams of you and me. Softly then the breeze blows, disturbing more than just the trees. But love's much more than we can know. We are one small globe in the eternal flow. Melodies of long ago, songs of innocence, harmonies to soothe the soul, have some consequence. Moonbeams brush the dark wood, awakening joys of you and me. Silently the snow falls, bringing winter symphony. But we're much more than we can know. We are one small globe in the eternal flow. But life's much more than we can know. We are one small globe in the eternal flow.
Goodbye for now.